Speak daily English. Real English, every day.
Do you ever find yourself stuck in this frustrating cycle? You want to say something in English, but first you think of the words in your native language, then try to translate them, and by the time you've figured out how to say it, the conversation has already moved on. This mental translation process is the number one obstacle preventing intermediate learners from achieving fluency. It makes your speech slow, hesitant, and unnatural. But what if I told you there's a way to break free from this cycle? A way to bypass translation entirely and start thinking directly in English? Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to rewire your brain to think in English using proven techniques that have helped thousands of B1, B2 learners transform their speaking abilities. This is the ultimate skill that separates those who speak English from those who truly become English speakers. Before we dive into the techniques, let's understand why thinking in English is so crucial for your language development. When you translate in your head, three major problems occur. First, speed. Translation creates a significant delay in your speech. You think of what to say in your native language, search for English equivalents, arrange them according to English grammar rules, and then speak. This entire process might take just seconds, but those seconds create the hesitation that makes your speech sound choppy and unconfident. Second, accuracy. Many expressions simply don't translate directly between languages. Idioms, phrasal verbs, and cultural references often lose their meaning when translated literally. When you think directly in English, you're more likely to use natural expressions that make sense to native speakers. Third, mental fatigue. Translation requires tremendous mental energy. Your brain is essentially doing double the work processing two languages simultaneously. This is why many learners feel exhausted after speaking English for extended periods. Thinking directly in English is much more efficient and less mentally draining. The good news is that at your B1, B2 level, you already have the foundational vocabulary and grammar needed to begin thinking in English. You don't need to know every word. You just need to start activating the English knowledge you already possess in a more direct way. To understand how to think in English, we first need to understand how language processing develops. There are typically 4 stages that language learners go through. Stage 1. Full translation. This is where beginners start. They think entirely in their native language and translate everything word by word. Stage 2. Partial translation. This is where many intermediate learners get stuck. You can understand English directly when listening or reading, but when speaking, you still formulate thoughts in your native language first. Stage 3. Limited direct thinking. At this stage, you can think directly in English for simple, familiar topics, but still revert to translation for complex ideas or unfamiliar vocabulary. Stage 4. Full direct thinking. This is the goal. Thinking naturally and automatically in English across all contexts and situations. As a B1, B2 learner, you're likely somewhere between stages 2 and 3. Our goal is to get you firmly into stage 3 and working toward stage 4. It's important to understand that thinking in English doesn't mean you'll never use your native language again. Even advanced speakers occasionally revert to their native language for certain concepts. The goal is to make direct English thinking your default mode for everyday communication. Now, let's look at the practical techniques that will help you make this transition. The first and most powerful technique for developing your ability to think in English is mental narration, describing your actions, surroundings, and thoughts to yourself in English throughout the day. Start by narrating simple daily activities as you perform them. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm making coffee. I'm walking to the bus stop. This might feel strange at first, but it's an incredibly effective way to train your brain to process everyday experiences directly in English. As you get more comfortable, expand your narration to include your environment. The sky is cloudy today. The streets are busy with people going to work. Your feelings and opinions. I'm feeling tired this morning. This coffee tastes good. I'm worried about my meeting later. Your plans. After work, I need to buy groceries. Then I'll cook dinner and watch that new series. The key is consistency. Set specific times during your day for English thinking practice. For example, commit to narrating in English during your morning routine, your commute, or while preparing dinner. Don't worry about making mistakes or searching for perfect vocabulary in your thoughts. The goal is to build the habit of thinking in English, even if it's simple English. As one of my students once said, I'd rather think in simple but immediate English than perfect but delayed English. Start with just 5 minutes daily, then gradually increase the time until thinking in English becomes your default mode for certain activities. Our second technique addresses one of the main reasons people revert to their native language: vocabulary gaps. When you don't know a word in English, it's natural to think of it in your native language first. Vocabulary clustering helps solve this problem by organizing words thematically in your mind, making them more readily accessible when needed. Here's how it works. Choose everyday contexts and situations: kitchen, office, transportation, emotions, etc. For each context, create a comprehensive word cluster including nouns, objects, people, verbs, actions, adjectives, descriptions, phrases and expressions. For example, a kitchen cluster might include nouns, refrigerator, stove, microwave, utensils, ingredients. Verbs: cook, bake, fry, chop, stir, boil. Adjectives: hot, cold, fresh, spoiled, delicious. Expressions: on low heat, bring to a boil, let it simmer. This technique is powerful because it mimics how native speakers organize language in their minds, by context, not by translation. Create these clusters for the contexts you encounter most frequently in your daily life. Review them regularly, and mentally rehearse using these words in sentences. When you find yourself lacking a word in English, instead of translating, try to circumvent the gap by using other English words you do know. This keeps you in English mode rather than switching back to your native language. For example, if you can't remember the word whisk, you might think, that thing you use to mix eggs quickly. This paraphrasing skill is valuable not only for thinking in English, but also for real conversations when you can't recall a specific word. The third technique focuses on having conversations with yourself in English, your inner dialogue. This is different from narration because it involves more complex thinking, reasoning, and opinion forming. Start by asking yourself questions in English and answering them in English. What did I think of that movie? Why am I feeling stressed today? What should I do this weekend? This forces you to form opinions and make decisions directly in English, which is more advanced than simple narration. Next, try mentally debating topics that interest you. Take both sides of an argument in your head. Is social media good or bad for society? Should I change jobs or stay where I am? Is it better to live in the city or countryside? For more structure, use these thought patterns. Problem solving. I need to find a new apartment. What are my requirements? Where should I look? What's my budget? Decision making. Should I take this course? What are the pros and cons? How will it benefit me? Reflection. Why did that conversation go poorly? What could I have said differently? A particularly effective exercise is imagining how you would explain a concept from your native culture in English. This challenges you to think about familiar ideas using only English vocabulary and structures. Remember, the goal isn't perfect English in your thoughts. It's developing the neural pathways that allow you to think directly in English without translation. Your inner voice doesn't need perfect grammar. It needs fluidity and immediacy. Many students find it helpful to record voice notes where they speak their thoughts aloud for 1 to 2 minutes without preparation. This bridges the gap between internal thinking and external speaking. The fourth technique involves strategically consuming English content to train your brain to process English directly. The key difference between passive and active consumption: passive, watching, listening while multitasking or using subtitles in your native language. Active, fully engaging with the content, using English subtitles or no subtitles, and consciously processing meaning directly in English. Here's how to make your consumption more active. 1. When watching videos or listening to podcasts, pause occasionally and summarize what you just heard, in English, not in your native language. This forces your brain to process and retain information in English. 2. React to content in English. Express your opinions, emotions, and questions about what you're consuming, either out loud or in your head. 3. Choose content that matches your interests. Your brain is more likely to engage directly with content it finds interesting or relevant. 4. Mix different types of content. Scripted content, television shows, movies for structured language. Unscripted content, vlogs, podcasts, interviews for natural speech patterns. Written content, articles, books for vocabulary expansion. 5. Shadow the audio by repeating what you hear immediately after you hear it. This trains your brain to process English in real time. The most effective approach is consistent daily exposure. 15 minutes of focused, active consumption daily is more effective than 3 hours once a week. Create an English environment by changing the language settings on your devices, social media, and apps. This forces you to process English throughout your day in practical contexts. Remember, the goal is to reach a point where you're understanding the content directly in English, not translating it to understand. Our fifth technique addresses a common challenge: the tendency to revert to your native language for certain types of thinking. Thought-switching exercises help you build the mental agility to stay in English mode even when it's challenging. Here's how to practice. 1. Set a timer for 2 minutes and think exclusively in English about a simple topic like your weekend plans. When the timer ends, consciously switch to your native language for the same topic for 1 minute. Then switch back to English for 2 more minutes. This builds your awareness of which language you're thinking in. 2. Identify your trigger topics, subjects that automatically make you revert to your native language. These often include emotional topics, technical subjects related to your profession, cultural concepts specific to your background, mathematical calculations. 3. Once you've identified these triggers, create English-only thinking sessions specifically for these topics. For example, if you always think about work-related issues in your native language, set aside 5 minutes to think about work matters exclusively in English. 4. Practice rapid response exercises where you see an image and immediately describe it in English without hesitation. This trains your brain to bypass the translation step. 5. Create language islands in your day. Specific activities that you do exclusively in English. For example, cooking. Think only in English while preparing meals. Exercise. Narrate your workout in English. Commuting. Use travel time for English thinking. The key is building awareness of when you slip back into your native language and developing the mental discipline to switch back to English. Over time, you'll need less conscious effort to maintain English thinking. A helpful visualization is to imagine your mind has different language rooms. Practice deliberately stepping out of your native language room and into your English room, closing the door behind you to stay fully immersed. Even with these techniques, you'll face challenges in your journey toward thinking in English. Let's address the most common obstacles and how to overcome them. 1. The complexity barrier. You can think in English about simple topics, but revert to your native language for complex ideas. Solution. Break down complex thoughts into simpler components. Instead of trying to translate a sophisticated idea all at once, express it using simpler vocabulary and structures in English. 2. The emotional barrier. You automatically switch to your native language when expressing strong emotions. Solution. Build an emotional vocabulary in English. Create lists of words and phrases that express various emotional states and practice using them in your inner dialogue. 3. The speed barrier. Thinking in English feels too slow compared to your native language. Solution. Accept that there will initially be a speed difference. With practice, the gap will narrow. Focus on fluidity rather than speed in the beginning. 4. The cultural concept barrier. Some concepts from your culture don't have direct equivalents in English. Solution. Practice explaining these concepts in English using descriptions and analogies. This valuable skill will help you bridge cultural gaps in real conversations. 5. The perfectionism barrier. You hesitate to think in English because you're concerned about making mistakes, even in your own mind. Solution. Remember that your thoughts don't need to be perfect. Native English speakers don't think in perfectly formed sentences either. Allow your English thoughts to be messy and incomplete at first. Remember that progress isn't linear. You'll have days when thinking in English feels natural, and days when it's a struggle. This is normal and part of the learning process. The key is consistency and patience. Many of my students report experiencing a breakthrough moment, a point when they suddenly realize they've been thinking in English without conscious effort. This often happens during an activity that fully engages their attention, like watching an exciting movie or having an interesting conversation. Thinking in English is truly the bridge between knowing English and living in English. It's the mental shift that transforms you from a translator to a genuine English speaker. Let's recap the 5 key techniques we've covered. 1. Mental narration. Describing your actions and surroundings throughout your day. 2. Vocabulary clustering. Organizing words thematically to fill vocabulary gaps. 3. Inner dialogue practice. Having conversations and debates with yourself in English. 4. Immersive consumption. Actively engaging with English content. 5. Thought-switching exercises. Building the mental agility to stay in English mode. I recommend starting with just one technique. Mental narration is usually the easiest entry point, and practicing it consistently for 2 weeks before adding another. This gradual approach prevents overwhelm and allows each technique to become a habit. Set realistic expectations. Thinking in English is a skill that develops over months, not days. But each day of practice builds neural pathways that make English thinking more automatic. Track your progress by keeping a journal of your English thinking time each day. Many students find that seeing their progress visualized helps maintain motivation. Start with just 5 minutes daily and gradually increase. The ultimate goal isn't to never think in your native language again. It's to develop the ability to switch into English thinking mode effortlessly when you need it. This cognitive flexibility is what characterizes truly bilingual minds. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more advanced English learning strategies. In the comments, let me know which technique you're going to try first, or share your own experiences with thinking in English. Remember, your brain already knows how to think. You just need to train it to do so in a new language. With consistent practice, English thinking will become as natural as breathing. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to hearing about your progress.